easier, and I have some vocal cords left when I'm done. Excuse me. Okay. Once again, just to remind you, we're going to spend most of our time looking at the big three. We're going to look at some other types of cancer. And remember a really basic thing about cancer. Cancer is a systemic disease. Most of the time in medicine, we try to make it a specific site-based disease. The difference between a systemic disease and a site-based disease is how you treat it. If you have a systemic problem, meaning it affects your whole body, you treat the whole person. If you believe in a site-specific analogy, you do site-specific things. I'll cut it out, I'll radiate it, I'll do this. We know from transplant studies, if you get a transplanted liver, something very unique happens inside your body. Because we know the cell type of the liver, because you got it from some other guy, and we know your cell type, we can now monitor what happens to the cells in you. And here's what we find out. We find out that the liver cells that you got from Joe, and you're not Joe, okay, that you got from the other individual, we find those liver cells scattered throughout your organs in your body. And we find some of your cells that have migrated to the liver and have taken up residence there. So whether you or me or whoever likes it or not, we trade cells between organs and processing on a regular basis. So that's why I say that cancer is a systemic disease. It has localized manifestation, though. What I mean by that is you can have cancer of the prostate and have abnormal cells there and not have abnormal cells in your right thumb. Now, the question is, why? Why are some organs more susceptible? We can blame it on genetics. We can blame it on if I smoke, my lungs have more of a problem in that area. If I put tar on a rabbit's ear and I keep applying tar day in and day out, I can cause cancer on the site where the tar is at. So there is some local manifestation. But the way to treat cancer is you always treat it systemically if you want the body to survive, because that's what needs to survive here. So, back to even though I talk about lung, colon, and prostate, I'm going to be talking about a way you deal with all of them. There's not a different treatment for one or the other. Preventing breast cancer. This should be the first box on your handout there. Number one, a lot of controversy here, so I'm going to show you the data. Avoid even light drinking. What's light drinking? If a person has one drink a day, they consider themselves a light drinker. I want to show you the data. This is what they call a meta-analysis. And what a meta-analysis is we take studies and we merge them together to find out the logic or the sequence, whatever, from the whole big picture. It's not just one study on one particular population that study may show you that 3 beers a day doesn't have any effect. Or you take another study that shows if you have 1 drop of alcohol in a year, you're doomed. No, I mean, in other words, we try to look and get the bigger picture. So meta-study, meta-analysis does that. And here's what they found out. If you look at here, multivariate relative risk of 1 is where we set everything. If your risk goes up with alcohol consumption, alcohol seems to be a problem. If the risk would go down, if this red line was going down, the more alcohol you drank, then alcohol would be good for cancer. We recommend you drink a lot. You may wreck your car, but you wouldn't get cancer. Obviously, the reason I'm showing this slide, alcohol intake. Alcohol intake is about 10 grams of alcohol per serving, whether it be 6 ounces of wine, whether it be 12 ounces of beer, whether it be a shot of whiskey, 1 drink equivalent we're talking about here, 10 grams of alcohol. For each extra 10 grams of alcohol, your relative risk is up 10%. There is nothing on that line that shows you that you can drink 3 drinks a day and have no difference. 10% increase in risk, and so if we have 5 drinks a day, we have 50%, times 10% increase in breast cancer. If you're trying to avoid breast cancer, find some other beverages you like better. Avoid even light drinking. Exercise. Vigorous exercise must work up a sweat. Well, that's not too hard around here lately. With the humidity at 105%, you walk out and think about work, and you go, wow. Maybe you don't sweat like I do, but I don't feel like I'm working hard, and everything just starts leaking. You know? Vigorous exercise must work up a sweat. And the general rule, that's true. If you're not working up a sweat, then your body isn't needing the perspiration to keep you cool, and you're not working hard enough. And for those of you who don't sweat, I know ladies glow, but for those of you who don't glow or sweat, you may not drink enough water, because it's part of the cooling system, and it is normal for you to perspire if your body is too hot. So, vigorous exercise improves your immune response, it improves your circulation, and it gives something for those adrenaline, stress hormones to deal with so they don't suppress your immune system. The second area, or third area here, birth control. Birth control pills increase your risk of breast cancer. The longer you use them, obviously the greater the risk. If you use them for 1 year when you were in college, haven't used them since, your risk is all low than if you've been on them for 10 years. Hormone replacement. Hormone replacement is why most ladies went off Premarin back in the 70s, because the thing came out and said, if you take this, then you're going to get breast cancer. So many ladies went off it. Unfortunately, many ladies still have a lot of hot flashes and they're looking for alternatives. But hormone replacement, specifically replacing estrogen and not replacing progesterone, caused abnormal growth in breast tissue. And that's what we're trying to prevent here, abnormal growth of breast tissue. So what do? Well, they came up with this one right here, bioidentical hormones. Bioidentical means the same ones that you make in your body, what your ovaries make. We want to give those to you, not a synthetic one, not one made from, and by the way, Premarin, pregnant mare's urine. That's, ladies, that's what it started with, okay? There's not enough horse, around to take care of millions and millions of ladies. So it was synthesized shortly after. So anyone that tells you that if you're taking Premarin, it came from a horse urine, they just don't understand what the laboratories are doing, okay? It's synthetic. And the progesterone is not a progesterone. Provera is a progesterone. It was a synthetic one. So what they've done for ladies who have difficulty with going through menopause, they put them on bioidentical hormones. There's a lot of things you can do to even avoid them, and we always do those first. Fat to weight or fat to muscle ratio. First, fat distribution. If you carry your weight high, you're more likely to get cancer. If you carry your weight low, you're less likely to get those. So fat distribution, where you hold your weight, tells me a lot about what kind of weight you have. The pinch and inch kind of weight, we call that subcutaneous, below the skin. The kind of weight that you hold high, they call it apple shape, that's the kind of weight that's what they call visceral fat. That's fat around the internal organs. So some people may not like where their fat is, and by the way, I'm not able to choose that, and neither are you, because the body puts it where it wants to, and usually not where you want it. Therefore, fat distribution, fat to muscle ratio is critical for prevention of cancer. You're much more likely to have cancer if you have visceral fat around the internal organs versus cutaneous fat on the outside. So the old rule, if you can pinch more than an inch, what was that Rice Krispies advertisement way back? Showing you how old I am. If you can pinch more than an inch, you need to eat this cereal. So they even were looking at it back then. And melatonin and your quality of sleep. Melatonin is a hormone that does cause you to sleep. It has a sedating effect. But that's only one aspect of melatonin. melatonin suppresses cancer cell growth. Now, when do you produce melatonin? When your eyes close and when the room is dark enough, then melatonin production increases. When the sun comes up or the room is lit, your melatonin production goes down. So the more hours that you spend under either regular light or artificial light, and the less you spend in a dark room in bed, the more likely you are to cause cancer to grow. The higher melatonin levels, the less likely you are to have cancer grow. I'm just trying to say it differently. You need to go to bed. How's that? Okay? There's nothing wrong with sleep. And sleep in a dark room without the television going and 18 other things going on. See, I had a real advantage. I grew up in the country as a kid. When I go to bed, I want it quiet. I lived in a dormitory with a whole bunch of guys. What did they do? If they haven't got their music going, they couldn't sleep. I'm going, where'd you come from? Brooklyn? You know, if you lived in the city all your life and you're used to sirens or you live next to a train track, what do? Your brain gets programmed. The train goes through at 12 o'clock. You don't even wake up. It goes through at 12:15, it'll wake you up. That's how smart your brain is. So if you have the advantage of growing up in a household where the lights went out and it was dark and there was no street lights, you produce more melatonin. Next area, we want to talk about healthy fats. Healthy fats are not only necessary, well, they're essential. You have to have them. That's why I call them essential fatty acids. They come in forms like flax, chia. We put those two together. Those two have your highest quantity of omega-3 fats per tablespoon. So if you take in 1 tablespoon of flax seed and grind it up, you'll get more omega-3 fats in that one dose than all the other foods you eat for the whole rest of the day. So we figure it this way. If you get your flax seed or your chia seed in, by the way, chia is slightly higher than flax. If you get one of those two in, I don't have to worry about what you eat for the rest of the day as far as getting omega-3 fats. That's why everybody pushes flax and flax seed. Nuts, in general, we go for almonds and walnuts. That's your highest omega-3 fats. Why are we so concerned about omega-3s? Omega-3s are the fats that suppress inflammation. Now, you can take an omega-3 fat and superheat it, and you can make it into a fat that can cause inflammation. So when you get your almonds, you get them fresh. You don't get them sugar-coated and honey roasted and all those things that I don't need to go any further to do it. Sunflower seeds are an excellent choice. As a general rule, seeds have a little bit lower fat, a little higher protein. Cholesterol. Here's what we found out. LDL, low-density lipoprotein, we call this the bad guy here. Ladies with high LDL cholesterol have an increase in breast cancer. You see what I'm getting at? We always put over here in the heart disease category. Don't block up your coronary arteries, don't block up your carotid arteries, and we always focus. But we never focus on the fact that ladies with high LDL levels have more breast cancer. That's not a reason to go take statin drugs. That's a reason to change your diet. Soy foods improve cancer survival. That gets to be a real hot topic because you've been told that that soy can cause cancer. Well, let's see if I can hopefully clear up the water a little bit. Number one, the population on my slide from 1944 to 1966, the population with the least amount of breast cancer was who? Japan and Thailand. They were down at the bottom. Populations that consume much more soy than what the average American does. Therefore, they must have eaten some kind of soy that actually tends to improve their health. So here's the take-home message. You can eat soybeans. You can eat those ones in the pod. The edamames don't eat the pod, by the way. They're supposed to squeeze them out. You can have soy milk. You can have tofu. Please do not eat the soy-based products that have soy protein isolate or soy protein concentrate in. That's the ones that are actually worse for you from stimulating cancer growth than even cow's milk. So in all your good prevention trying to avoid animal products, please do not get the ones that man has messed up. Soy protein isolate means they've isolated a certain fraction of the soybean, or soy protein concentrate. Smart dogs, you're smart this, you're smart that, is not very smart.
Where do you find that in a product?
They're everywhere.
They're like
They're in Loma Linda Foods. They're in Worthington Foods. They're all over the place. Please read your containers. And the market now, I had a man here, Ingles carries a whole variety of foods. You still have to read your labels. They also carry entomamis. Get those out of the frozen department, I don't have to worry about you. So soy is not a bad food. Soy is actually a healthy food, but man has messed it up. Go ahead.
I read something, I can't remember what the details were about soy affecting the thyroid.
Soy affecting the thyroid. Okay, let's talk about that just for a minute. Soy foods with their phytonutrients in them can affect thyroid function, but I don't know how much you'd have to eat to get there. It would be, I don't know, a bushel or two a day. The quantity would be very significant. I don't take my thyroid people off soy. I'll tell you a really good reason. Going to bed and sleeping 8 hours a night, every night, would do more for your thyroid gland than anything soy could possibly do. Because most people don't have thyroid problems. They have sleep deprivation and adrenal fatigue, and they go to the doctor because it mimics a thyroid problem, and they put them on Synthroid, and the people think they've done better. I'm going, well, why don't they just give them methamphetamine? They'll all do better. They'll get twice the work done. The point is, you go and get a stimulant to cover up the real problem. If you do that, then you're making a big mistake with your health. So that's when they come to me. How many people in my career have I taken off thyroid hormone? Because they really don't need it. It's not because I did something magical. It's when they start eating right and start sleeping better and start exercising and get their weight down to where it should be, the thyroid's fine. It really isn't a problem. So I don't believe we have a thyroid gland per se problem. I think we got a major lifestyle problem. Diet. Cancer prevention on the area of diet, cancer stem cells, really interesting research. And the question we're trying to address here is, why does cancer come back so frequently in the ladies? Especially after you've been told, I'm cancer-free. And the next year you come back and you go, oh no. No, it never went away. We killed the manifestation. We took out the tumor. We suppressed the bulk of the tumor, and when they checked you to see if you had any more tumors, they found none. Therefore, you don't have cancer. I'm going, that is an erroneous conclusion. So we start studying stem cells, and what we find is that stem cells, which are undifferentiated cells that can be made into different tissues, we find that the cancer cells, stem cells, are not taken care of by your radiation and by your chemo. They can survive those attacks. Now, how many months or how many years does a cancer cell have to divide until you've got a manifestation that we can detect with our present medical equipment? Some people estimate up to 10 years. I think it's less than that. But one cell makes 2 cells, and 2 cells makes 4. Well, it's got to be a few million cells before we can even see it. So do the math. How many times do you have to double the rate of that until you can get something that's manifested? We can speculate. What if it's only 5 years and not 10? The point is, how do we deal with the precursor cell that's going to cause us a problem later on? And it's simple, we trip over it. the broccoli sales is going to zoom at the local store. Watch this. Sulfane, which is from broccoli, was tested to see if it would kill and destroy these cancer stem cells. It did in the laboratory, but laboratory tissue grows in a petri dish, we squirt the solution on it, we come back, and the cells are dead. What does it prove? That whatever we squirt on there is toxic to the cells. That's all we proved. Because someone said, well, if that proves it, I'll eat it, and then I'll go. Well, wait a minute. You can eat a lot of things, including vitamins and minerals, whatever, but you want those that gets transported in the system. So here's what they did. They said, okay, we're going to make a juice of broccoli sprouts. By the way, it was about a half a cup of sprouts, if I remember the research. And what we're going to do is we're going to have ladies drink this broccoli sprout juice 1 hour before their surgery. Johns Hopkins University, they're in Maryland. What they did is said, okay, we have ladies who are coming in for breast reduction surgery. I'm going, somebody was brilliant. I want to test whether solution can get to cells in breast tissue, not just through the body, not to your elbow. Can it get to the site of the problem? What an ingenious study. So ladies were already come in to get breast tissue removed, so they gave them their cocktail an hour ahead, and guess what they found out in the pathology reports after the surgery with the removed tissue that they wanted to have removed? Broccoli. The sulforaphane was actually in the breast tissue that they removed from those ladies. That's how effective that is. A half a cup of broccoli sprouts is what took care of the stem cells. We have no better solution. I mean, you want chemotherapy? Go to your local store. Better yet, sprout your own. Some of you people are sprouters or whatever already. Well, broccoli is as good as alfalfa sprout. You may even like it better. And even a lot of your salad bars have what? And full of sprouts with the salad. Heterocyclic amines, these are chemicals that are changed when meat is fried, heated, broiled, or... I'm not against you grilling out back as long as it's an ear of corn. And now you're going to go, wait a minute. Now he's really hit me hard. The heterocyclic amines are two things that happen. One is when the meat is cooked on the grill, that's part of the problem. And then when the meat that drips off the meat and gets down the fire, and then you smoke your own meat with your carcinogens, that's the problem with grilling. If you want to grill anything else out there, please enjoy it. Get out your shish kebabs and put your beets, your carrots. What else you want on there? I shouldn't even ask. Okay. Green vegetables, broccoli, collard greens are very important to help your liver out. Your liver is the organ that detoxifies your body. So your green vegetables, your broccoli, your collard greens are powerful liver detoxifiers and prevent breast cancer. And of course, you can see here on the bottom, a whole food plant-based diet. To me, the conclusion is obvious. The hard part is finding a program that I can enjoy. See, I'm at the point now where I believe that healthy food can also taste good. And that's why when people come to my house, and my wife is an excellent cook, and they sit down to the meal, and some of the questions are, what is in this? And I said, I'm not going to tell you. And my wife is, oh, no. I said, no, they don't get to know. They're at my house, we're going to do it my way, right? Isn't that fair? If I come to your house, I don't ask you. And so they eat it, and I go, how do you like it? Oh, that was really good. Then I tell them it had tofu in. And I could have sworn, yeah, it would like me using bad language or something, you know? It is amazing how psychological words, and tofu is one of those psychologically loaded. As soon as you know that tofu's in it, it just causes a regurgitation effect or something. Well, the problem is they never had good food. So I don't tell them. And so they go, this is marvelous. How do you make it? I think that's the way it should be. So when you go and you try something, do not ask what is in it. Taste it and go, that's good, or it goes to the big dog on the back porch. Whatever you have to do. And when you get some health recipes you're trying, some are going to be winners, and just admit some are losers. It's like when people eat sweet corn. Yeah, they get out the ear of sweet corn, they haven't even tasted it yet. And they get out the butter and they whip the butter on there. And then they got the salt and salt the whole thing down. They haven't even tasted it yet. And they go, this is what makes it taste good. I go, listen, if your corn doesn't taste good with nothing on it, you must have got it from the wrong field. See, I grew up in the country. Horse corn grew on this side of the field and sweet corn grew on this side. I just say you got in the wrong field. That was for the animals. But if your food doesn't taste good and you've got to put all this stuff on it, then you've got some bad food. I'm sorry. You know, take that one back, return your corn, or do something. What can you do now? Maintain ideal weight, daily aerobic exercise. Here's one. Reduce hours in a constrictive bra. By the way, this is for the men, of course. The point I'm getting at here is that lymphatic flow in breast tissue is critical. I know some of you ladies like your running bra, but use it only when you're running. Don't use it all day, and definitely don't use it during the day, and definitely don't use it all day. The key here is that when you restrict lymphatic flow, you do not give the ability of the breast to recover from even a difficult situation or a situation where it is trying to have the immune system. And so when you go to the doctor, they go, oh no, you've got cancer cells in a lymph node. And I go, well, wait a minute. Where do you think they're supposed to go? Why do you think you have an immune system? See, a cancer cell in a lymph node is like you being behind enemy lines, and you can get killed a lot quicker there. That's the way it's supposed to happen. So it's totally normal to have cancer cells in a lymph node, because the lymph node is the immune tissue that if any place a cancer cell in your body could get killed, it would be there. And we look at it like, oh no, it's terrible. It is terrible if the lymph nodes are not doing their job and not killing cells. Manage and decrease stress affects your whole life. Well, that's a whole nother seminar. Get adequate rest and sleep. Get help with emotional issues. Ladies, I have to give it to you. You do better than we do as men versus women. A lot of women will do something about their mental health, and men will act like we can handle it. That's the kind of the way we're made. Right or wrong? Guess who lives the longest? Guess why there's so many old ladies around, men? Because they must have done something right, or we're not here. By the way, my wife's father-in-law almost made it to 100. Less than a month away from being 100. And it's been almost a year now, but he was the exception to the rule. Okay, colon cancer. Number one, transit time. When you eat something to when you have an elimination, transit time from eating to elimination is critical if you eat anything, but more is critical if you eat bad food. But the problem is, when you eat bad food, what happens to the transit time? It slows down even more, so you get with both barrels. So if you have toxins in the bowel and you have less exposure, you're better off. I'm not trying to encourage you to eat bad food, don't misunderstand me. What I'm trying to say is that most foods that cause bowel cancer are low in fiber, and they stay there in the bowel much longer. Foods that are high in fiber and decrease cancer stay in the bowel much less time. Therefore, your transit time. If you want to know what your transit time is, you can do a variety of experiments. You can eat beets. You can eat corn and don't chew it too well. You can take a dose of charcoal and see when it comes, etc. You will be shocked. You will be thoroughly shocked. The average American probably runs between 72 or more hours. That's 3 days, 4 days. This doesn't mean you have an elimination once every 3 days. This means that you have the time that it takes for it to go through. Why do you think the laxative business is a $2 billion business? Stool size. I'm sure glad we just didn't eat lunch.
What would be a good time?
A good transit time would hopefully not be more than 36 hours. And most of you probably are somewhere near that if you're eating a plant-based diet. What's that? Well, remember, your stomach, your intestines, your small intestine, your large intestine, 25 feet, not too bad. Stool size, colon cancer increases with low volume stools. The less volume, the more likely you are to get cancer, because the foods you're eating, number one, and number two, because the exposure to the bowel wall. If you're producing less than 1/4 pounder a day, you're in big trouble, okay? That seems to be the dividing area. I'm not talking about hamburgers here. Phytates, compounds found in whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds are what your bowel wall needs and wants for a healthy bowel wall. Remember, at least 80% of bowel cancers are preventable. The list that I'm giving you will do that. Number 4, heme iron. Iron comes in many things. A dark green, a dark blue, or a dark red is where your iron is at. So beets, blueberries, collard greens, those are your high iron food. They're non-heme iron. Heme iron comes from hemoglobin, and that's from animal sources. The higher the heme iron, the hydroxy radicals are cancer preventing. The heme iron is a cancer-causing agent. It doesn't mean your body doesn't need iron, it just needs it from a vegetable source. Yes, ma'am. Two things, and that's one thing we made you go on. The question was about water and does that help transit time. First of all, yes, it definitely does. But you're going to have something in the bowel to hold water in, to keep the water functional in the bowel, and also to increase the size of the stool. Okay, how many of you have got I mean, everyone is eating dry apricots, okay? Okay. If you don't eat a dry apricot, compare that to the size of a regular apricot. Was it maybe 1/4 the size or something? So what's the difference between a dried apricot and a whole apricot? It's all about water. So the volume that you're passing has to do with water content. The next thing it has to do is magnesium content. If you don't eat enough foods that are high in magnesium, then you won't hold the water, and you can be constipated drinking 2 quarts of water every day. So water is a major factor, but you have to have something to hold it in. You automatically will hold more water in the more fiber you eat. It's that simple. Anybody recognize that? It's a tuber known as turmeric or curcumin, however you want to say it. We may be able to grow that somewhere in this country, maybe in a greenhouse, but it doesn't grow normally here like it does in South America, in India, etc. Turmeric is one of your best anti-inflammatories to your bowel wall. Please cook with it as much as you can. And we're going to show you a few things that happen because we're looking at populations in India versus United States. India is known for its curry, its turmeric, and many food sources, but look at their disease rates. Women in the United States have 10 times the colon cancer that they do in India. Women in India. They have 7 times more lung cancer than the women in India, and they have 5 times more breast cancer than the women in India. I hope India doesn't get so wealthy that they have McDonald's and Long John Silver's and Kentucky Fried Chicken. I hope they don't make that mistake. Unfortunately, it's happening. Men in the United States versus ones in India, they have 11 times more colon and rectal cancer. They have 23 times more prostate cancer. They have 7 times more lung cancer, and India eats 7% meat daily. Let me back up. The people in India, 7% of the people that live in India eat meat daily. That means 93% of people that living in India don't get meat daily. So it's a situation with meat as well as situations with what they eat. We give some credit to turmeric. That's why I brought that up first. Preventing colon cancer, fat. Increased refined fats increases colon cancer risk and slows transit time. All those charts I showed you, higher fat, higher cancer. That's what we're saying here. Unsaturated fats produce free radicals. Now, what is an unsaturated fat? Mazola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, grapeseed oil, olive oil, rapeseed, commonly known as canola oil. These are all unsaturated fats, and unsaturated fats produce free radicals when they get oxidized, highly inflammatory to the body. If you want to get fats that are unsaturated and that don't have free radicals, go to Dr. Udo, U-D-O. And by the time you buy his brand, because he will guarantee you that this fat is not oxidized, this fat is not heated above 110 degrees during the processing, by the time you buy it, you probably put it on the shelf and say, I think I'll look at it for a while. Because a tablespoon would be, you think you're taking it therapeutically, you wouldn't be just using it for a salad dressing or something else. Well, maybe if you're wealthy enough. But the point is that good fats can be found very reasonably in your avocado, in your olives, etc., etc. Now, back to olive oil. Olive oil can say on the jar, extra virgin, cold-pressed olive oil, and you go, wow, that's got to be healthy. Will you ever find a jar that says extra virgin, cold-pressed, cold-processed oil? Have you ever seen that label yet? No, because it doesn't exist. Because even the olive oil that you buy in the store that's extra virgin or extra virgin is still heated to over 300 degrees to clean it up and make it that nice golden color. If you saw real olive oil, like in the biblical times, you would be totally shocked because the jar would be very cloudy. It would almost look like there was mud in the bottom. If you shook it up and you go, I'm not sure I want to eat that. You see, we purify these things to the point where they're actually not healthy for us. Fiber, use whole food fats. See, this is not a fat-free program we were talking about before. This is using fat as it's naturally found in the food. See, when I give you an almond, it's got fat, but it also comes with antioxidants to take care of the fat. That's why when I spoke time before on heart disease, I showed you that those people that eat nuts on a regular basis do what? Have less heart disease. On the other hand, when we're trying to reverse heart disease, we hold back on that.
How many nuts in a meal, say, breakfast should it be?
The number of nuts depends on how hard you're going to work, what your waistline looks like, and your metabolism. So there's no one set rule. But if a person has if they're maintaining their weight, to maintain their energy, they can eat a half a cup of almonds throughout the day if they want, at a couple meals. I wouldn't eat that once in one meal because you got a fairly high fat load. So a quarter cup would be totally reasonable for one meal. Now, if you start putting on weight, we'll have to talk about it. Fiber, water soluble, and water insoluble improves transit time. Water soluble is your oatmeal. When you overcook it, it turns into Elmer's glue. You know how one of those things. Okay, that gluiness, that mucus, for lack of a better word, is a water soluble fiber. Pectin from fruit, oatmeal, The water insoluble is your broom. That's like your wheat. Your whole wheat, anything with bran in it, that would be the water insoluble. So this keeps water in the stool, and this increases the volume. Water soluble means it goes into solution. Water insoluble means it's not changed as it goes through. And berries suppress colon cancer growth in the colon. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, berries growing in your mountains here, awesome. So any berry, strawberries. In fact, strawberries are one of the best detoxifiers you can ever get your hands on. And the reason it is because very few people take the seeds out. That's supposed to be a joke. The reason that the detoxification is so effective on a strawberry is the seeds in the strawberry are incredibly good absorbers of toxin as they go through the bowel. So you can fight this thing two ways. You can eat the most healthy diet, and you can eat the best quantity of detoxifiers, and you've got the best combination for taking care of your intestinal tract. Like I said, the recommendations I'm giving will take care of 80% of all colon cancers. They may seem simple to you. That's good. Put them into practice and we'll get the results. Plant-based diet improves transit time. There's no heme iron. It's got plenty of iron. In fact, I put people on a plant-based diet slightly anemic. They have no iron, no liver, nothing that they think from an animal source, and their hemoglobin starts coming up. I'm going, isn't that amazing? They didn't have to eat all that calf's liver to get their iron level. It's high in fiber, automatically. It's healthy bowel bacteria. Your diet determines what bugs you have in the bowel. And if I can find my paper quick enough, I'll read it if we have time. I'm not going to take time to go through it right now. The point that I'm making is that when you eat a plant-based diet, you change the type of bacteria that grow in your bowel. The type of bacteria that grow in your bowel on a plant-based diet do not put off the enzyme into carcinogens. On the other hand, we've taken vegetarians and fed them a meat-based diet, and within 1 week, we see a total shift in the type of bacteria they have in their bowel. Some interesting study, if you like to study this area, it's the gut-brain connection. You'll be shocked what you find. But I look at the gut immune system reaction. And if you want to mess up a population, there's one way to really mess up a whole population and get away with it. Give them antibiotics. If you want to destroy a population, give them antibiotics. You'll kill the good and the bad and the ugly bacteria in the bowel. You'll mess up the bowel function. You will destroy an immune system and suppress what they can handle. So I look at it a little bit different, because at the same time, antibiotics have been the most magical drug that has ever come along in the history of our medical system. But we have used and misused and overused, and we have abused them to the point where now what are we doing? We're going to have diseases come along with our weakened immune systems that a lot of people aren't going to be able to deal with. So, back to your intestinal tract. The way you keep a healthy intestinal tract is not by taking probiotics every day. That's only for people who are trying to get back. But you may take 8 different strands of probiotics, and you probably need about 200 different strands of healthy bacteria. So it's a very small window, but it is still, the logic is correct. Put good bacteria back in. Now, to carry that logic one step further, why are you putting it in your mouth? You go, well, because it's a tablet. Well, of course. Bacteria. Well, you got bacteria in your mouth. We know that. You've got tonsils in the back. antibodies to kill the bacteria. You've got acid in your stomach that will wipe out any bacteria when the acid level is high enough. So by the time the food hits the small intestine, it's supposed to be sterile. There is not supposed to be any bacteria growing in the small bowel. And I've got to treat people that now have bacteria growing in the small bowel where it doesn't even belong. And then God put an appendix at the lower end of the small intestine, which is more lymph tissue, which means it makes more antibiotics to keep the bacteria in the large intestine where it belongs from invading the small intestine. So why are you putting probiotics in your mouth? Because guess what happens to them? Stomach in the acid in the stomach wipes out most of them. That's why all that 5 billion bugs doesn't get where you want. Now, you're not going to like the treatment. Some of you are probably going to smile already because you've heard me say this. If you want to put probiotics where they belong, you take an enema. And you plant the garden with good bugs, and if you give it good food, those bugs grow just fine. So you don't need to take probiotics for the rest of your life unless you insult yourself with an antibiotic or steroids. If you're willing not to keep insulting yourself, you can actually be healthy. So you see, it's good logic because the medical community now believes that we are messing up the bowel. And so now we want to give a probiotic and still give an antibiotic, and they're going to have a battle somewhere, but we're not even using them correctly. So back to my slide. Healthy bowel bacteria is absolutely crucial. It helps control weight. And if you're a green person, nothing wrong with that. Helps the best use of Earth's resources. I believe that. I believe we're stewards of the Earth. And I showed you in a previous slide when we talked about the Earth. If everyone in this world would become vegetarians by tomorrow morning, we had so much food to do, we wouldn't know how to get it out of this country quick enough. Let me say that again. 85% of all soybeans and 85% of all corn is going to animals right now. If we didn't feed the animals, what would you do with all those corn? I'm not talking about small amounts. I'm talking about millions of tons of food. It's incredible what would happen. Preventing prostate cancer. Okay, men, we've talked about the ladies enough. They've tolerated me very well. The hormones and growth factors stimulate prostate cancer. Dairy products increase the risk of prostate cancer. In fact, dairy products were made for baby cows, not for us. We've absconded with it. We've built a whole society on drinking dairy products. It's totally normal. You go to other societies around the world, and they think that we haven't been weaned yet. And they really think that how can an adult drink milk? Well, that's just because the way they think. If we were raised in their culture, we would think the same way. Hormones and growth factors stimulate the prostate to obviously become cancerous. Second one, eggs. Increase 2 times the spread of prostate cancer eating 1 egg a day compared with rarely eating eggs. Eggs increase prostate cancer, men. If you want to increase your risk, then this is what will do it. Please consider avoiding those 2. By the way, there's no fiber in either of those. Poultry, chicken, 4 times the prostate cancer progression. What I'm quoting for you is various studies from around different studies that say, okay, if we feed the people this much, here's what you get. It's a summary statement. IGF, insulin-like growth factor 1, the higher the IGF-1, the greater risk of developing cancer. Where do we get IGF from? We get it from eggs, we get it from milk, and we get it from any animal. Insulin-like growth factor is not insulin, but they call it insulin-like growth because it stimulates the cells to multiply. When we stimulate cells to multiply, we increase the risk of the cell not multiplying correctly. Animal protein stimulates this insulin-like growth factor production. Muscle proteins in meat, eggs, egg whites, and milk. Lacto-ovo-vegetarians do not significantly reduce IGF-1 factors. Do not shoot, just this is what the data were coming. Let me read that again. Lacto-ovo-vegetarians, milk and egg vegetarians, do not significantly reduce the IGF-1 levels. When I was raised, we thought that this was the way to go. Research is not bearing it out. Lacto-ovo-vegetarians still have way too much prostate cancer. Vegan vegetarians, a plant reduce this cancer-promoting hormone. And fats, the fat increases prostate cancer. We saw that in the slide, even whether it was olive oil or whether it was lard. I'm not trying to bore you with this. I'm just trying to do a summary statement so that you can hopefully get the whole picture. Preventing prostate cancer. Flaxseed contains lignans. We already said it contains omega-3 fats. Omega-3 fats suppress the inflammation, but it's the lignans that your major cancer fighter when it comes to flaxseed, and that obviously helps to reduce prostate cancer. Recommended dose, this is ground flaxseed now, is 3 tablespoons a day. You can put it on your salad, put it in oatmeal, put it wherever you want. Dr. Dean Ornish is known for coronary artery regression research. He and wasn't a doctor, Nathan Pritikin, back in the 70s, was not a medical person. He was an engineer. But he was a young man, well, I consider it young now. He was a young man in his 40s that had coronary artery disease. And his options back there were stents weren't even on the horizon at that point. He said, I'm not willing to do that. So he started doing his own research and studied and studied. The conclusion he came up with was what he called 10-10-80. 80% carbohydrate, 10% fat, 10% protein. To eat that way, you basically have to be on a plant-based diet. In his program, he had 5 milligrams of cholesterol a day. 1 egg is 250. So after 50 days, you could eat 1 egg. No, what I'm trying to say is that the reason he did that is because he had bought into another theory that vegetarians are automatically deficient in B12, which, by the way, is not true. Even though most of your medical doctors you go to, and they say, I'm a vegetarian, he says you need to take B12. And go, how do you know? They don't. They can't look at me and say, you're a pint low. I mean, they can't do that. By the way, you know what the secret is? There's more B12 deficiency in the steak-eating population than the bean-eating population. Both groups have pernicious anemia. There just happens to be more in the steak group. So being a vegetarian doesn't mean low B12. Doesn't compute at all. So back to Dean Ornish. He believed that his people needed some B12. He got his B12 source from cow's milk, which gave them a little bit of cholesterol. Now, years down the road, he says, okay, we were able to help heart disease. So the Nathan Pritikin Institute, because he's no longer here, and Dean Ornish went into a research project and says, okay, we have seen that we can reverse coronary artery disease. What can we do for the next big one? Obviously, we're talking about cancer. Here's his research. The whole food plant-based diet reduced PSA, prostate-specific antigen levels, and when biopsies were done, 500 gene expressions were altered. Okay, here's what he found out. If a man that had prostate cancer went on his heart reversing, coronary artery reversing diet, guess what happened to the prostate cancer? He proved that on the plant-based diet that he was changing, he wasn't changing genes, they're permanent, but he was changing the genetic expression of the genes that were promoting cancer in the prostate of the people that he was studying, and he turned that around to where the ones in the control study, their PSAs didn't change much. The ones in the study that he was doing, Not one single man in his study that he did had to go for a radical surgery to remove the prostate gland. So what he found out is that the same dietary that changed the coronary arteries was the same dietary intervention that changed the actual PSA levels. Yes, sir?
I have a question. You say that it eliminated prostate cancer. Would that also, in that process, would that eliminate swelling in the prostate, enlarging the prostate?
We're going to address that toward the end, benign prostate hypertrophy. But the answer is a definite yes, because you can't change one part without changing the other part of that gland. Where are we at here? Diet versus exercise. Diet plays a greater role in cancer prevention, and both are important. Let me take a minute and read the data, because it is this dynamic. It says, research showed that the blood samples of people randomized on a plant-based diet group were dramatically less hospitable to cancer cell growth than the blood of people in the group who had eaten their typical American diet. Now let's drop down to what Ornish was showing. The blood in the men of the standard American diet showed a rate of cancer cell growth by 9%. So his control group that stayed on the American diet, he saw their growth go up 9%. Men placed on a plant-based diet for a year, and the blood circulating levels of their bodies were suppressed cancer growth by 70%. So one group had a 9% increase. The group on the plant-based diet had a 70% decrease in the other direction, nearly 8 times the stopping power compared to the meat-centered menu. Similar studies have been done on women, not that they have prostates. Similar studies have been done on women eating a plant-based diet appear to strengthen their body's defenses against breast cancer. You see, when you do the right thing, it's not just taking cancer or just one organ. It's dealing with the immune system. And it said it did it in just 14 days. And then the other one I want to talk about is exercise versus diet. I'm just going to read you the conclusion of the matter. The exercise and diet group had been following a plant-based diet for 14 years, along with participants in moderate exercise, such as daily walk. So what they were doing in this study is, okay, we've got the physical fitness people. They go to the gym and work out an hour every day. What happens to them and their cancer risk versus what they called the prodders, the people that walked and were a plant-based diet? So we had one group that did nothing. The next group were the gym people who went to the gym every day, but they ate a meat-based diet. And then we had the people who didn't go to the gym. They were just walkers. They call them the striders, and they ate a plant-based diet. Here's what happened. The strollers, let's go back. The control group who were eating a diet and not working out, their ability to kill cancer cells when their blood was drawn, their ability to kill cancer cells is very low, 1 or 2%. Somebody took their blood, put it on the dish with the cancer cells, it killed only 1 or 2% of the cells. The next group, as I told you about, the next group were the people who went to the gymnasium, worked out every day, 5 days a week, ate the American diet. They were able to kill 2,000% or 20 times greater than the people who didn't work out. So what should that tell you? People who work out have a better, healthier immune system. The question is, what about these people who are just walkers? The walkers who ate the plant-based diet and were the walkers, their rate of killing cells was an astonishing 44,000% more cancer cells than the first group. So what's the take-home message? Not to put down anything, because the people who worked out got a benefit, didn't they? But the people who were just walkers and ate a plant-based diet were twice the rate, from 2,000 to 4,000% greater of taking care of the cancer cells. Now, you probably have heard me say this before. If you have to pick a regime, it is always better to pick a dietary regime than to pick an exercise regime. Exercise can never compensate for a bad diet. I did a lot of running when I was in Southern California. We had various sponsors for running. Some were Dannon yogurt. Some were Michelob. Don't ask me what that's got to do with running, except that they did have some scientific research. If you drink one beer before you run, it helps to release fatty acids. Of course, you don't care if you complete the... No. You see the point I'm making at. So we had a variety of sponsors that would try to make their unhealthful products healthy because they involve them with what? A healthy thing. So just because a company is sponsoring a health activity has nothing to do with the health of the company. I mean, what happened to Virginia Slim? You know, these gorgeous women smoking skinny cigarettes, and that makes them healthy, right? So you see what we've done. We've advertised in such a confused way. Now, how did I get here? Number one, the exercise versus diet is always the major player, the most significant player in your life. Please remember that. P.S. Don't forget to exercise. Because exercise does what for you? It does stimulate your immune system, just not as much as diet and exercise. It improves circulation. It helps to keep your waistline where you want it. And yes, if you try to maintain a normal weight and do no exercise, you will have more times when you will feel more hungry when you don't have to. So some people that exercise can eat a few more calories and maintain the same weight, and they're a lot happier with their menu. So, this is not an apology or telling you not to exercise. This is saying, please make diet your major thrust and then put exercise in its proper place too. Benign prostate hypertrophy, for you, sir. Lifestyle prevention. Flaxseed is good for decreasing the size. This is not cancer, by the way. This is an enlarged gland that happens usually in us guys today. Now, I don't think of self as old. June 17, I did turn 65, and I'm not sure how to think about that. Some of you gentlemen who have been there before me, maybe can help me out, okay? Garlic, raw, in food, garlic powder, onion, whether it's fresh or in your stir fry. Cooked vegetables are better than raw. You never thought I would say that, did you? There are advantages to both sides of the fence. If I steam my broccoli, you're going to get certain nutrients. If I give you broccoli raw, you won't get the same nutrients. Both are good. So the take-home message is you don't have to eat a 100% raw diet to be healthy. Steaming actually can give you some foods and some nutrients that you don't break down as well in your digestive tract that steaming can do. So all the evidence isn't all in the raw food, folks, and definitely not all in the cooked food, folks. So cooked vegetables better than raw when it comes to benign prostate hypertrophy. This doesn't mean stop eating your fresh salads. It means steaming can be helpful in some situations. Yes, ma'am.
I think I've heard some situations been around where people have more trouble digesting the raw when they get older.
Do people have more problem digesting raw when they get older? It wouldn't, let me say it this way, that may be true, but it's because there's something else wrong. They may not be producing as much hydrochloric acid, but there must be some other issue they're dealing with. Because in general, raw food, properly masticated, they chew well enough, there's another problem, whether they have their teeth or not, what are we getting here? But that should not make it a problem. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. A refined food is a food that you've either extracted something or added to. That can make a food more refined. Beating it to death, grinding it up, taking it out back and hitting it with a hammer does not change the nutrient structure. So your Vitamix did not change anything. The most it would do would be pre-chewed. I mean, however you want to think about it. Now, I will tell you this, that we are a smoothie generation. You ask people, what did you have for breakfast? Well, I had my smoothie. Here's the downside. The nutrients are the same, but the act of chewing and involving the saliva glands is a very important in digestion. That's why I'm not a smoothie person. Now, compared to what some people would eat, the smoothie is a much better choice than Dunkin' Donuts. I will admit that. But when it comes to digestion, what you don't complete in the mouth has to be worked on in the stomach. What you don't complete in the stomach overloads the small intestine. That's our big problem. So chewing food, I'm going to sound like your mom, 30 times. Chew your food well. It'll help you keep your teeth. It'll make stronger gums. Your saliva glands will work better. You'll digest your food better. And I happen to believe you'll enjoy your food better. I mean, God put taste buds on my tongue, not in my stomach. And the way I used to eat going through school, you had 10 minutes for lunch and you better be off to class. So I have inhaled way too much food. So now I eat slower because I don't get to eat as much either. So you got to make it last longer. Okay, where are we at here? Soy foods actually are good for the prostate, not the opposite. But the same rules that I gave for the ladies in breast cancer, do not eat the refined soy products. Legumes, beans, chickpeas, split peas, lentils, etc., are good for benign prostate hypertrophy. Lung cancer, I'm not going to take a lot of time with, not because it's not important, but I doubt if many people that come to my lectures are smoking, but obviously avoid cigarette smoking. If a person avoids smoking for 11 years, their risk of lung cancer is the same as if they didn't smoke. It doesn't mean they don't get more emphysema. I'm not saying that. They may have COPD, but I'm talking strictly about cancer. So cancer rate of lung can actually change. If you're going to smoke, I feel like I'm helping you cheat here. Here's the supplements that are good for your lungs. How's that? A diet rich in vitamin A, E, and C seem to be targeted with the toxins from the cigarette. Most of you, let me back up. I almost never have to deal with smoke anymore. Maybe it's your situation too. I don't work in a smoky environment. No smoking at the office. I mean, you wouldn't come to a preventative doctor if I was sitting there puffing on a cigarette. I hope you'd fire me. So I don't get it at work. Definitely don't get it at home. I don't get it at church. So I feel like I'm almost smoke-free. I mean, before you'd always, oh man, my clothes stink. I got to get out of here quick. Don't want to wear my nice wool sweater in here because I got to go to the dry cleaner or something. I almost never have that. I don't know, how's it for your experience? Most people aren't smoking around us anymore. So I think that's a benefit. I think that a person, you want to hear this? I think they should have the right to smoke, just don't hurt anybody else. I also don't think that I should pay for their insurance if they smoke. So I think we should leave people totally independent. I'm not trying to mind their business. They want my advice, I'll give it. But I don't have a burden to go out and pull cigarettes out of people's mouth and stomp them on the floor or get out the fire extinguisher on them or anything. I don't have that burden. But I also think that we should have common courtesy. Turmeric, carcinogen blocking effect, dark leafy vegetables, and air pollution. Air pollution and what they're causing in the disease is highly overrated in silicosis and asbestosis. People that are a mechanic that changed the old brake linings that had asbestos in all their life and didn't smoke had very little incidence of this problem. It's cigarette smoking plus. What EPA wants me to believe is all this asbestos in all these houses is killing me. Well, that's just not true. You have to have smoking with it. How many people do you know that have asbestosis and never smoked a cigarette? You'll find the incidence is extremely low. Same with silicosis. Elements of a cancer lifestyle, proper diet, fruits, vegetables, cereal grains, nuts, maintain proper weight, regular meals, and no snacks. If you really want to take care of your intestinal tract, feed it well, let it rest up, and feed it again. If you keep feeding it over and over again, it might puke on you. In fact, I wish it would. They did a study when I was at, I think it was before I got to Limelight, on nurses. And what they did is they fed them a snack on the hour every hour. And these weren't, maybe peanuts or a dried apricot, or knowing Southern California, may even give them some dates, They grow almost wild there. But here's the point. Every hour on the hour, they gave them a snack. So they started, that was when they had 7 to 3 shift, okay? So from 7 to 3, a snack on. And then they said, okay, we're going to hold them over and we're going to give it to you for another 8 hours. So for 16 hours, they had a snack on the hour, every hour throughout those 16 hours. And then here comes the hard part. They pumped their stomachs after being on this thing for 16 hours. You think that's bad? I worked in the laboratory. Who's going to examine this stuff? Well, I wasn't part of this research. And here's what they found. After 16 hours, they found remnants of the initial snack that they ate 16 hours before. Talk about putrefaction. Talk about things that you would never think about eating. Snacking is the best way to damage your stomach. And it's also the best way to need to have Prilosec or Propulsid or Tegomit or one of these hydrogen ion receptor inhibitors we give for our stomachs. If you want to take care of your stomach, feed it well, let it rest, and feed it again. And let it rest. Feeding it on a regular basis is not good physiological. Regular aerobic exercise, sunlight in moderation, stress control, foods, phytochemicals. You've already seen some of these. By the way, when you get new information, don't think you ought to go out and buy a bottle of it. That's why I'm showing you this slide. The Shinigrin in Brussels sprouts. Sulforaphane, we already talked about those. In broccoli. Resveratrol in your ripe grapes. Your lamelline is citrus fruit. Your allyl sulfates, that's your garlic. Your isoflavonoids and saffrons, your soybeans and other legumes. Proteinase inhibitors. Ellagic acid, research out of Clemson, folks in South Carolina, showed ellagic acid is very helpful in breast cancer. Caffeinic acid, phytic acid, all these are in foods. Please enjoy your food. Foods high in omega-3 fats, I'm showing you this because 1 tablespoon of the oil is 7,529 milligrams of your omega-3 fats. It's 60% of the seed is fat. So that's why I say you're going to need 2 tablespoons to get that if you're grinding up the whole seed. And we can look through the whole list. And you'll see as we go down, it gets less and less. But like I said before, if you do your omega-3 fats and from flaxseed, you do that once a day, and guess what? You've got the whole rest of the list covered because there's nothing on the list that even comes close to this.
Why does it have canola oil so high?
Because it's a bad slide. No, canola oil is on because canola does have 1,000 milligrams per tablespoon of omega-3 fats. But folks, you don't go to a bad food that's highly oxidating to find a little bit of good. That's what we do in research, okay? The reason that people will tell you to eat certain foods is because they find it's got omega-3 in. Why do you think those people, Michelob, why do you think they sponsored a 5K run? Well, of course, it's advertising, I know that. But they would tell you that you'll be able to run faster and further if you use their beverage. Why did Dannon yogurt? Why do we do any of these things? Because they're telling me that green tea has got an antioxidant, but they forgot to tell you how much caffeine it has in it. But no, we go, well, green tea is good for me because it's got an antioxidant. I propose to you folks that chicken manure has got an antioxidant in it. Please don't buy any capsules of it. That's how ridiculous we've gotten. You see my point? We use these words and buzzwords. It needs to be a good food to start with. That's how, anyway. I'm going to retire, so you won't have to put up with my cynicism after a while, okay? Disorders that benefit from omega-3 fats. You may see yourself on this list. I hope you don't, but let's go through. Rheumatoid arthritis. Why do omega-3 fats help rheumatoid arthritis? See what I said. If you eat an anti-cancer diet, it should help you with arthritis. You go, well, those two got to do with each other. Because you've got one body, one immune system, and you need to take care of it. Primary Raynaud's disease. That's a disease that is not a vascular blockage. It is a neurological disease that shuts down blood flow. Psoriasis, gastrointestinal ulcers, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease responds to omega-3 fats. Depression, over-aggressiveness. If someone sends you a pound of flaxseed, you might need to take the hint. Especially if you get it for Christmas, right? Possible prevention of breast and colon carcinoma, prevention of obstructive pulmonary disease. Do you realize that lung tissue, even a smoker who's put in 30 years of smoking, can still be revived to some extent? No, I can't give them back a new lung. No one can. Antioxidants, here's the top list. Vegetables, garlic, kale, spinach, fruits, strawberry, plum, orange, grapes, kiwi. Here's the thing. If your plate looks good, it probably is pretty good food. If you got the colors of the rainbow, however you want to think about this, you're getting your antioxidants. Cancer-fighting fruits and vegetables, from blueberries to spinach, from plums to Brussels sprouts. Notice all whole foods, foods that you like. Enjoy the color. Vegetarianism is actually a way of increasing your repertoire, not decreasing. I eat a much wider variety of foods than most people that I meet. And when I go to other countries, I want to try all their particular fruits. And guess what? It's hard to beat a good American peach, I'll tell you. They may have things that look like, maybe in slight taste like, but we do very well in this country. Now, mangoes, Costa Rica has got some good mangoes. So does Florida, by the way. Benefits of a total vegetarian diet. I'm being a little bit synonymous here. I think we've covered that. Eat a variety of vegetables. Eat a variety of colorful fruits. Vitamin C, this is vitamin A. Vitamin A, if you think of dark yellow or red, you're going to get your vitamin A. Also dark green. Vitamin C foods, everything from blackberries to oranges, from bananas to broccoli. Vitamin E is going to be your fat side ones, your nuts and your seeds. Your turn. Any questions? We're going to get a microphone. That way I can hear it. This is for my benefit too.
In my younger years, I smoked 24, 25 years. I quit smoking back in the 80s. How is that going to affect my possibilities of getting lung cancer, or is it?
How many years have you quit for?
87, so was when I quit, so it's about 35, 36 years.
Your risk is exactly the same as mine.
Good.
But when we go out and try to walk up that hill, you could have some residual lung changes, but the risk of cancer, we usually figure at the 11-year point, after you have quit for 11 years, you're the same as the man standing next to you at the same age who has never smoked at all.
Very good.
That should not be your concern.
That's good.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was easy. Wait, he's going to get a microphone over here. That way we can hear you. That way everybody can hear you.
Hold it real close.
You was talking about transplants, like when you transplant from stem cells and stuff, that you can get their cells from them. What about blood transfusions? Does that
Well,
pertain to that.
blood
too.
transfusions is called a direct transplant. See, we don't usually look at blood as tissue, but blood is tissue because we have all those cells in. And when you put that in your vein, that's called a direct transplant. That's even more direct than getting a liver or someone else's organ. Oh, you've got it. No, I mean, face the fact, folks. You don't want to get a blood transfusion unless you're dying. Because in that transfusion, we don't screen for cancer cells. We screen for hepatitis, we screen for various things. We do not screen for cancer cells. And here's a few basic rules. Never, ever get 1 pint. Because if you only need 1 pint, you don't need it because your body can recover. So if they say you need a transfusion, the next question you should be, hey, if you can talk about it, you're doing pretty good. If the first thing is, doctor said, I need to give you 3 pints. He says, well, what's my hemoglobin? Well, your hemoglobin's 8. You say, thank you, doc. I think it may take me 2 months to recover, but I'll be glad to take my chances with my own blood. Now, you've got another option. If you know you're going in for surgery, you can stock your own blood. Now, on the other hand, most surgeries require no blood. I'm talking about total knees, total hips. They're that efficient and that accurate and that good at what they're doing. But if you have a surgery that may require blood and you've got time to work on it, you just didn't fall off your motorcycle, you can actually bank your own blood. Now, your own blood, here's another rule, your own blood is only good for 120 days. So this isn't something you can stock up for 8 months ahead of time. The lifespan of a red blood cell is 120 days, so you can't just keep stocking this stuff up. But if you know a month ahead of time, and you know you may possibly need a transfusion, that's the wisest course to take. Because blood is tissue, and it's somebody else's tissue. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know you've talked about colon cancer and lung cancer and stuff, but how about blood disorders like leukemia, or is it the same basic program for blood cancer and maybe lymphoma, things like that? And plus, I wanted to make a comment about the charge for chemo. How about $64,000 a session, maybe 57? That's what my charges were each time.
That's crazy.
That's the first thing first. Yeah, that's a mouthful. When it comes to the blood-borne diseases or the bone marrow diseases, what I've laid out here would be the exact same thing that I would do for that individual, because it is still a tissue, happens to be the bone marrow at that point. The other thing, on the other hand, to be fair, the most success that they've had using chemotherapy is in the area of these blood-borne diseases. We have children who had leukemia at age 6 that are still alive at age 50. That is the most success we've had in that area. So let's give credit where credit is due. On the other hand, many adults that come along with the chronic lymphocytic leukemias and those, a lot of times they're going to outlive their problem. And we've been treating it so radically, we probably have shortened their life because of what we're doing. And then, I deal with a lot of cancer patients. I respect your opinion. If you go, I'm not going to go this route, I watched my uncle die the hard way, I'll say, I will work with you no matter what you do, and I'll give you the best advice I can to help your immune system do the best it can. That's the take-home message. I still think we need to do it up front, though. The better you take care of your immune system now, the better chance we have of fighting it. I'll tell you something else. This is an interesting speculation, but the immunologists tell us that by the time you reach age 50, we've had 2 subclinical causes of cancer, the average of us. So cancer, as compared to being this incredible monster that's going to attack you, is really an abnormal growth of tissue that a healthy immune system can totally eliminate for you, and the most you may feel is like you had the flu for 3 or 4 days, and you go on your way and you go, well, praise the Lord, I feel better. Well, you don't know what all happened inside you, but yes, I'm grateful too. The immune system gets responsible for most of your disease prevention, and that's why you see very few cancers between 20 and 50. When you go from 50 to 60, you see an increase. From 60 to 70, you see an increase. Here's something else phenomenal. By the time you hit 85, we see the cancer rate drop off significantly. So everybody lived at 85, you don't have to worry about it. No, I'm saying there's different trends in this. We see a childhood blip on the screen. We see a childhood leukemias. And then we coast along, like I say, up until in the 50s, and then we see it starting to rise after that. So what happens between 20 and 50? Hopefully, if you take care of your immune system, you're in top shape because you are able to defend your body. Basically, what's your defense of cancer? I mean, obviously, don't smoke. Your biggest defense of cancer is how you take care of your immune system. The immune system is equipped to kill abnormal cells. You got a whole organ called the spleen, and guess what the spleen's job is? Its whole job is take out abnormal red blood cells. That's the whole job of that organ. But when you probably have made, maybe you're going to feel tired, you probably have made about 3 or 4 billion red blood cells just sitting here while I've been talking. That's how much you make every hour of the day. Anyone else have a comment?
I have a question since I have the mic.
Go ahead.
How about, you mentioned melatonin and insomnia, or helping people sleep. What do you prescribe for somebody that just can't get a full night's sleep?
Melatonin, in the context that we're talking about here, actually improves your immune response. Excuse me? The dosage would be 3 milligrams, 2 of those about an hour before you want to go to bed. Now remember this, melatonin is not Restoril. It is not going to knock you out. But if you take melatonin and go to bed, and take melatonin and go to bed, and take melatonin and go to bed, you will have a benefit from it because it does much more than just put you to sleep. The reason for it, between age 7 to 70, you have about 100% melatonin production here. By the time you reach age 70, you're about at 10% of your original production. So as we get older, we get less and less melatonin and less production. The other thing is melatonin can't out your adrenaline. So what does that mean? I want you physically tired, not just mentally. What's that? I'm too close.
I was just thinking about what you mentioned about butter. Is there a substitute that's you could put, because when you have toast, you like to have butter on it. Is there something good?
Well, I can tell by the question, it's already loaded. Is there something good I can use that will replace my butter? There is a variety of things that people have made to try to replace butter. The more you love butter and you love the flavor of butter, the less these substitutes are going to help. Margarine is not an applicable substitute for dairy butter. But I know some people make some recipes out of corn and a variety of other things, and if you want something just to put on your bread, it'll look right, it may even half taste right. I've come to the conclusion, if my bread doesn't taste good, it's not worth eating. So I eat my bread because I want to eat bread. If I want to eat butter, I should be eating butter. I know my logic isn't that good, doesn't work for everybody. But the point I'm getting at is no, there is no butter substitute that will work as good as a person who loves butter.
Not even the
Earth balance? Well, since our Earth is so far out of balance, I guess we'll have... No, that is bogus. Look at the fat content and you'll agree with me that there's no way you can afford to eat that and be on any kind of Most of your vegan look-alikes, smell-alikes, taste-alikes are high fat. Vegan cheese is high fat. Margarine is 100% fat. So they try to make me think that I'm getting healthier because I'm avoiding a little bit of cow cheese and I'm avoiding butter. And I'm going, not much. Sorry. Even thanked me. That was pretty good.
I have heard that if you, as soon as you wake up, just go to the curtain, open it up, and look at the morning sun, and it increases your serotonin, which in turn is helpful for melatonin. Is that true?
Well, partially. When you wake up in the morning, and assume you want to be awake, okay, and people that have sleep problems, the best thing they can do is when they want to wake up and get into a room with bright lights, open the window, look at the sun, because that shuts down your melatonin production. Okay, you've had to go on a family emergency. Someone's either very ill or has passed long, and you have to drive all night. Remember those nights? And you're dead, 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you shouldn't be on the road. I shouldn't be on the road, but you got to get there kind of deal. You like to get there alive. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, the sun starts coming up. You go, wow, I'm not as tired. Hey, I think I made it. Well, what gives, folks? I just drove 3 more hours. I should be ready to just fall asleep at the wheel. When the sun comes up, it shuts off the melatonin, because your eye is the receptor that tells the pineal gland what to do and produce melatonin. Now, the second part of the question, it is true that serotonin, well, tryptophan is a precursor for serotonin, and serotonin is a precursor for melatonin in the brain. So they got the data a little, looking at the sun is going to shut down the melatonin production. But the brain likes serotonin. That's what all these antidepressants are about. They don't allow the serotonin to break down as rapidly. So, anyway. Folks, if you have to go, you will not embarrass me to walk out. I think sometimes I'd walk out on me too. It's okay, all right? Don't worry about it. If you got to go, fine. If you have questions, we're good, okay? You've been very gracious. Thank you for having me. And I hope that you'll take at least one of these hints home and put it into practice, and you'll be better for it. Yes, sir, right behind you.
I have one more question. I was told through some blood work that my thyroid was not working properly, and
Okay.
they put me on a small amount of medication. Now, in the event that I went to the RAVE program, would I be able to eliminate that? I know you said earlier that a lot of people don't have thyroid problems. It's something else. I don't remember what it was, but...
To answer your question, first of all, I'd like to see your lab work. It'd make me give a little more intelligent of an answer. But the point is that there's many other variables that can suppress that thyroid gland, not that you need medication. What we've discussed here today is definitely a big step in the right direction of improving thyroid function. The second thing is that your thyroid is directly related to how much weight you carry. So if you're carrying 30 less pounds because you've been on the program for a year, you won't need as much thyroid hormone. So we're decreasing the requirement as well as we're improving gland function. Sometimes simple things of massaging your gland when you're standing there in the hot shower can make a difference in improving circulation of the gland. There's simple things that you can do to help that. Here's the way I see it. There are some thyroid glands that are broken, so to speak. Like a person that has a pancreas that's gone is going to have insulin. There are people who can't live without that. That's a gland that's failed. Most thyroid medications are given to people without gland failure. So that's the small percent of the group. That's why I say in the past, I don't know how many people in my career I've taken off it, not because I just say go off it and don't care about your lab works, it's because they truly don't need it anymore. That's what I'm going for. But yes, what we have talked about today would be one of the best interventions you can do to save a thyroid, improve production. Very good, Glenn.
Okay, want to thank everyone for coming, and there is a sign-up sheet on the table in the foyer for